Welcome to Midnight Truth, where peaceful stories guide you into the perfect night's rest. Before we start, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps me bring more soothing stories to you and others who need them. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, find your cozy spot, close your eyes, and let's begin this calming journey together. I pulled up to the house on a gray Thursday afternoon, my hatchback stuffed with boxes and garbage bags full of clothes. The divorce was still fresh. 3 months out of court, 6 months out of love, and I figured a new town, a new job, and a cheap rental were my ticket to something better. The place wasn't much to look at. 2 stories of peeling paint, a sagging porch, and windows that stared down like tired eyes. The realtor had called it a fixer-upper with charm. I called it affordable. The movers weren't coming, couldn't afford them, so I hauled everything in myself. The front door groaned like it hadn't been open in years, and the air inside hit me with a damp, musty smell, like wet socks left in a hamper too long. The floorboards creaked under my sneakers, loud enough to make me wince. I told myself it was just an old house settling into its bones. Nothing weird about that. I spent the day unpacking, setting up the basics. A mattress in the bedroom upstairs, a coffee maker in the kitchen, a folding chair in the living room. By night, I was beat. I microwaved a frozen burrito, sat in my chair, and listened to the house. It wasn't quiet. The wind rattled the windows, and every so often, a low thump echoed from somewhere upstairs. Probably pipes, I thought. Old houses have quirks. The next morning, I met my neighbor. She was a wiry woman in her 60s, all sharp elbows and sharper eyes, watering her roses across the fence. "You're the new tenant, huh?" she said, peering over her glasses. "Hope you're braver than the last one." I laughed, figuring she was joking. What? Did they hate the creaky floors too? She didn't smile back. Nah, ran out screaming one night, middle of winter. Kept yelling about footsteps that weren't his. Cops found him half frozen down the road, babbling about curses. Weird fella, though, probably nuts. I nodded, unsure what to say. Well, I'm not big on ghost stories. Just need a place to sleep. "Suit yourself," she said, snipping a dead rose. "That house has a history, is all. Been empty a while." Her words stuck with me as I walked back inside, but I shook them off. Small towns love their rumors. I had bigger things to worry about, like my first shift at the hardware store tomorrow. I spent the evening arranging my clothes in the warped old dresser upstairs, then crashed hard. That night, I woke up to sound. Heavy footsteps, slow and deliberate, pacing the hallway outside my room. I sat up, heart thumping, straining to listen. The house was dead quiet now, just a faint whistle of wind through a crack somewhere. "Old houses," I muttered, lying back down. But my eyes stayed open, fixed on the ceiling, until the sky outside turned gray with dawn. My first day at the hardware store was a blur of sore feet and forced smiles. I stocked shelves, answered questions about pain I barely understood, and nodded to my boss's pep talk about fitting in with the team. By the time I got home, the sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the house's chipped siding. I was too tired to care about the neighbor's weird story or the footsteps I'd heard last night. I just wanted food and sleep. The kitchen was dim, lit by a single bulb that flickered like it was on its last legs. I heated up some soup, the hiss of the stove blending with the house's usual noises, creaks, groans, the occasional tap from upstairs. It was starting to feel normal, like background music to my new life. I ate standing at the counter, too lazy to drag my chair in and scroll my phone. No text, no surprise there. Upstairs, I brushed my teeth in the bathroom, avoiding the cracked mirror that made my reflection look warped. The water gurgled in the pipes, loud and uneven, and I caught a whiff of something sour, like rotting wood or old rags. I chalked it up to the ancient plumbing and headed to bed. The mattress sagged under me, springs poking my back, but I was out fast. Then it happened again. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, like someone dragging boots across the floor. I jolted awake, eyes wide in the dark, holding my breath. They weren't fast, just a slow, steady thud, 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 moving down the hall toward my door. I sat up, fumbling for my phone. The screen said 2:47 a.m. The sound stopped right outside my room. "Hello?" I croaked, voice shaky. Nothing, just silence, thick and heavy. I waited, ears straining, but all I heard was my own breathing. Maybe it was a dream, I told myself, or the house shifting. Old places do that, right? I lay back down, but sleep didn't come easy. The next morning, I found muddy streaks on the hallway floor. Not big, just smudges, like someone had tracked dirt in. I frowned, checking my sneakers. They were clean. The front door was locked, same as last night. I grabbed a rag and wiped it up, muttering about leaky roofs or drafts. But when I went downstairs, I noticed something else. The living room window was cracked open an inch. I didn't remember touching it. At work, I couldn't focus. My co-worker, a guy named Pete with a scruffy beard, noticed. "You look wrecked," he said, tossing me a box of screws to sort. "New place keeping you up?" "Something like that," I said. "Neighbor told me the last tenant freaked out and ran off. Said the house is cursed or some crap." Pete snorted. "Yeah, folks around here love that stuff. Heard the original owner was a nutcase, some guy into weird rituals. Died in there, I think. Probably just gossip." I forced a laugh, but my stomach twisted. Rituals? That didn't sound like small-town nonsense anymore. That night, I locked every window and door, double-checking them. The house felt colder, the air sharper, and as I climbed into bed, I swore I heard a faint whisper, like a voice too low to make out, coming from the walls. Work was a slog again, but at least it kept my mind off the house for a few hours. I spent the day hauling bags of mulch and dodging customers who thought I knew the difference between oak and cedar. By the time I got home, the sky was bruised purple and the air smelled like rain. The house loomed ahead, its crooked silhouette sharper against the clouds. I fumbled with my keys, the porch creaking under me like it was complaining about my weight. Inside, the musty smell hit me harder than usual, mixed with something bitter, like burnt hair or old chemicals. I wrinkled my nose and flipped on the lights. The bulb in the entryway buzzed, casting jittery shadows on the walls. I kicked off my shoes and headed to the kitchen, but halfway there, I stopped. The air turned cold. Not chilly, freezing like I'd walked into a meat locker. My breath puffed out in front of me, faint but visible. I rubbed my arms, glancing around. The thermostat on the wall read 68 degrees. Bullshit. Great. I muttered, stomping upstairs to grab a hoodie. The cold followed me, clinging like damp clothes. In my room, I yanked open the dresser, and that's when I heard it, a low, raspy sound, like someone exhaling right behind me. I spun around, heart slamming against my ribs. Nothing, just the empty room, the sagging mattress, the cracked window letting in a sliver of night. I stood there listening, but the sound didn't come again. I shook it off, or tried to. Old houses make noises. Pipes hiss, with groans. That's what I kept telling myself as I microwaved leftovers and sat in my folding chair. TV flickering with some dumb sitcom I wasn't watching, but the cold spot stuck with me. It wasn't just a draft. It felt alive, like it was watching me. Later, brushing my teeth, I noticed something else. The bathroom smelled worse, like sulfur, sharp and choking. I gagged, spitting into the sink and checked the drain. Nothing clogged, just rusty water stains. I opened the window to air it out, and that's when I saw her, my neighbor, standing in her yard, staring up at my house. Not at me, but at the attic window above my room. Her face was pale, lips moving like she was muttering to herself. I waved, but she didn't wave back. She just turned and shuffled inside. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I kept the bedside lamp on, a weak glow against the dark. Around midnight, the footsteps started again, thud, 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 slow and heavy, pacing the hall. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing them to stop. They did, but then something worse replaced them, a scratching sound, faint and rhythmic, coming from the attic right above me, like nails dragging across wood. I pulled the blanket over my head, heart racing. "Mice!" I whispered. "It's just mice." But the scratches kept going, steady and deliberate, until I couldn't pretend anymore. Something was up there, and as I lay there frozen, a new sound joined in, a faint guttural hum, like a voice trying to form words. It was coming from the walls, the floor, the air itself. The house was waking up. I woke up with a headache, the kind that sits behind your eyes and throbs like a warning. The lamp was still on, its light weak against the gray morning leaking through the curtains. The scratching and humming from last night had stopped, but the silence felt worse, too thick, like the house was holding its breath. I dragged myself out of bed, joints stiff from the lumpy mattress, and checked the hallway. No muddy streaks this time, just the warped floorboard staring back at me. Downstairs, I brewed coffee, the machine gurgling like it was choking. The kitchen smelled off again, sulfur and something sweet like rotting fruit. I opened a window, letting in damp air, and noticed the cold spot was back. It hovered near the sink, sharp and biting. I stepped through it, shivering, and felt a prickling on my neck, like someone was standing too close. I turned fast. Nothing, just the empty room and the drip of the faucet. Work was a welcome distraction. I restocked nails and listened to Pete ramble about his truck's transmission. During a lull, I brought up the house again. You said the original owner was into rituals. What kind? Pete shrugged, wiping grease off his hands. Dunno, man. Old timers say he was a recluse, always scribbling in books, muttering about spirits. They found him dead in the basement. I think heart attack or something. Left the place to rot till the bank took it. Why? You hearing ghosts? Nah, I lied. Just curious. Back home, the house felt heavier, like the air was pressing down. I decided to explore, tired of jumping at shadows. The main floor was sparse. Living room, kitchen, a closet with a busted door. Upstairs had my bedroom, the bathroom, and a narrow hall leading to a locked door I hadn't noticed before. It was old, with splintered and stained, with a rusty knob that wouldn't budge. No keyhole, just a deadbolt that looked welded shut. I pushed on it, but it didn't give. Then I heard it, a soft thump from the other side. I froze, ear pressed to the wood. Another thump, then a scrape, like something dragging across the floor. My mouth went dry. Hello, I said, voice barely a whisper. No answer, just a faint rustle, then silence. I backed away, heart pounding, and told myself it was a raccoon or a rat. But that door, it didn't feel right. That night, the footsteps came again, louder this time, stomping down the hall. I sat up, gripping my phone, ready to call. Who? The cops? And say what? My house is creaky? They stopped outside my door, and then, God help me, I heard breathing. Slow, ragged, like someone with a bad lung. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at the crack under the door. No shadow, no light, just that sound, in and out, for what felt like hours. When it finally stopped, I didn't sleep. I lay there, eyes burning, until dawn. The locked door nagged at me. Whatever was in this house, it wasn't just old pipes or mice. And I had a sinking feeling that door was hiding something worse than I could imagine. I couldn't shake the breathing from last night. It clung to me like damp air as I stumbled through my morning routine. Coffee, toast, a quick shower with that sulfur stink burning my nose. The locked door loomed in my head, a splinter I couldn't pull out. I decided to ignore it, focus on work, but the house had other plans. Before I left, I checked the hallway again. The door was still there, silent and stubborn, but something new caught my eye, a faint scratch mark on the floor, like someone had dragged a chair or a box. It wasn't there yesterday. I crouched, running my fingers over it. Though it felt cold, colder than the rest of the floor, and my skin prickled. I stood up fast, grabbed my keys, and bolted out. Whatever was going on, I wasn't ready to face it. Work dragged. Pete noticed me zoning out and tossed me a rag. You're a million miles away, man. House still bugging you? Yeah, I admit it. Found a locked door upstairs. Heard something behind it. You know anything about the layout? He scratched his beard. Not really. Old houses like that got secrets. Hidden rooms, weird additions. Guy who built it was paranoid. They say, Into occult stuff, like I told you. Maybe he locked something up for a reason. Like, what? I pressed. Dunno. Cursed junk? Dead bodies. He grinned, but I didn't laugh. I was starting to think he wasn't far off. That evening, I couldn't avoid it anymore. I grabbed a flashlight from my car and went upstairs. The locked door stared me down. It was darker in the dim light. I tapped with the flashlight. Solid, no hollow spots. Then I noticed something. A thin gap at the bottom, barely wide enough for a finger. I knelt, shining the light underneath. Dust, cobwebs, and paper? A yellowed corner poked out, crumpled and old. I grabbed a hanger from my room, bent it into a hook, and fished it out. It was a page, torn and brittle, covered in spidery handwriting. My hands shook as I read. October 12th, 1893. The rites are working. The veil thins. It speaks to me now, demands more. Blood on the floor, salt in the air. The house listens. The rest was smudged, ink bleeding into nonsense. At the bottom, a name, Elijah Crane. My stomach dropped. The original owner, Pete's nutcase. I stuffed the page in my pocket, heart racing. Rituals, spirits. This wasn't gossip. It was real. I needed more, but that door wasn't budging. That night, the house came alive. Footsteps stomped overhead, not the hall, the attic. Thud, thud, crash, like something fell. I bolted upright, flashlight in hand, listening as the scratching started again, louder, angrier. Then a voice, low, garbled, like it was underwater, muttered words I couldn't catch. It wasn't in the attic anymore. It was in the room with me. I swung the light around, beam shaking. Nothing, just shadows and that damn cold air wrapping around me. The muttering stopped, but I felt eyes on me, heavy and close. I didn't sleep. I sat there, light on, waiting for morning, the page burning a hole in my pocket. Morning came slow, sunlight creeping through the curtains like it was afraid to touch the room. I hadn't slept, just sat there clutching the flashlight, the torn page from Elijah Crane crinkling in my pocket. My head buzzed with questions. Who was he? What rites was he doing? And what the hell was muttering in my room last night? I needed answers, but the house felt like it was daring me to look. I skipped breakfast, couldn't stomach it with that sulfur stink lingering, and headed to work. Pete was unloading lumber when I cornered him. Ever hear of an Elijah Crane? I asked, keeping my voice low. He paused, squinting. Yeah, rings a bell. Think that's the guy who built your place. Rich weirdo, obsessed with occult books. Story goes he went nuts, locked himself in there, died alone. Why? Found something with his name on it, I said. Talked about rituals and blood. Pete whistled. Creepy. You sure you want to mess with that? Might be better off crashing somewhere else. I didn't answer. Part of me agreed, but I'd sunk my savings into this lease. Running wasn't an option. Not yet. Back home, the house felt different. Darker, even with the lights on. The cold spots were everywhere now, drifting like fog. I decided to check the attic. If the footsteps were up there, maybe I'd find more Crane stuff. The stairs were in a closet I'd ignored. A rickety pull-down ladder, wood warped and splintered. I tugged it open, dust raining down, and climbed. The attic smelled like mildew and something metallic, like old pennies. My flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing stacks of junk. Broken chairs, a cracked mirror, boxes sagging with rot. The floor creaked under me, and I moved slow, half expecting it to give out. Then I saw it, a trunk, black and dented, shoved against the far wall. My pulse kicked up as I knelt and popped the latch. Inside were books, leather-bound and crumbling. Titles like The Mysterious and The Key of Shadows. Under them, a journal, thick and stained, with EC scratched on the cover. I flipped it open. Pages of tight, frantic writing. The door is open. They come through at night. I hear them in walls, the floor, my skull. Blood binds them. Salt holds them. I cannot stop. Dates ran from 1892 to 1894. The last entry, scrawled and shaky, they want the house. I am theirs. A loud thud snapped me out of it. The ladder slammed shut, trapping me up there. I scrambled over, yanking at it, but it wouldn't budge. Then the scratching started, fast, violent, all around me. The air turned ice cold, and that voice came back, louder, snarling words I could make out. Something brushed my arm, clammy, like a wet hand. I swung the flashlight, beamed wild, but saw nothing. The ladder finally gave a groan, and I half fell down it, journal in hand. I hit the floor hard, panting, and looked up. The attic was silent again, but the cold followed me, seeping into my bones. Whatever Crane had let in, it wasn't gone, and it knew I was here. I didn't go back to the attic. The journal sat on my folding chair, its stain covered glaring at me like an accusation. I paced the living room, coffee gone cold in my hand, replaying Crane's words. They come through at night. Blood binds them. What did that even mean? Spirits? Demons? I wasn't religious, but this felt bigger than ghost stories. The house creaked around me, a low groan like it was laughing at my confusion. Work was a mess. I dropped a box of screws, zoned out mid-conversation with a customer, and got a sharp focus from my boss. Pete cornered me at break. "You look like death, man. What's up?" I hesitated, then spilled it. The attic, the journal, the muttering. His eyes widened. "You need to get out of there. That's not normal house stuff. Sounds like Crane messed with something bad." "Can't," I said. "No money, no place to go. I just need to figure it out." He shook his head. "Your funeral. That night. I locked every door and window, even wedged a chair under my bedroom knob. The journal stayed downstairs. I couldn't sleep with it near me. The house was quiet first, just the usual creaks and taps. I climbed into bed, flashlight by my pillow, and tried to relax. Big mistake. Around 3 a.m., I woke up freezing. The blanket was on the floor, and the room felt like a fridge. My breath puffed out, white and shaky. Then I heard it, thudding footsteps, not in the hall, but in the room. They circled the bed, heavy and slow, like someone sizing me up. I grabbed the flashlight, hands trembling, and flicked it on. Nothing, just the empty room. Shadows jumping in the beam. The footsteps stopped. I exhaled, thinking it was over. Then the bed dipped. Something heavy sat at the foot, pressing the mattress down so hard the springs squeaked. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, just stared at the empty space where the weight was. The air turned thick, sour with that burnt hair smell, and a low growl rumbled, close, like it was right in my ear. I bolted upright, swinging the flashlight. The weight lifted, the growling stopped, but the cold stayed, wrapping around me like a wet towel. I stumbled out of bed, legs shaky, and checked the room. Windows shut, door still locked, chair in place. Nothing could have gotten in, but something had. Downstairs, I flipped on every light, hands shaking as I grabbed a journal. I skimmed Crane's entries again, looking for clues. One stuck out. The blood keeps them close. I spilled it in the basement. Sealed the pact. They won't leave. The basement. I hadn't even thought to check it. Too busy with footsteps and locked doors. But now it made sense. Whatever Crane had done, it started down there. I stood at the basement door, a flimsy thing off the kitchen I'd assumed led to storage. It was cracked open an inch, though I swore I'd left it shut. A faint draft slipped out, cold and damp, carrying a whisper, my name soft and drawn out. I slammed it shut, heart hammering, and backed away. Sleep wasn't happening tonight. I stood there, staring at the basement door, my name still echoing in my head like a bad dream I couldn't shake. The kitchen was dim, the single bulb flickering like it was about to die, and that cold draft kept seeping out, brushing my ankles like fingers. I'd slammed the door shut, but it didn't feel like enough. The house was awake now, watching, waiting, daring me to do something stupid. And I was stupid enough to listen. The journal was still on the counter. Crane's jagged handwriting spilling secrets I didn't want to know. The blood keeps them close. I spilled in the basement, sealed the pact. That line burned into me. Whatever was here wasn't just wandering. It was tied to this place, rooted in whatever Crane had done down there. I grabbed a kitchen knife. Not that it'd do much against growling shadows, and my flashlight. My hand shook, but I couldn't sit around anymore. I had to see it. The door creaked open slow, like it was reluctant to let me in. A wave of damp air hit me, thick with mildew and that metallic tang I'd smelled in the attic, like blood, old and rusted. The stairs were narrow, wooden, sagging under my weight as I descended. Each step groaned, loud in the stillness, and the darkness swallowed my flashlight beam a few feet ahead. I kept one hand on the wall, feeling slimy plaster, and fought the urge to turn back. At the bottom, the basement stretched out, a low-ceiling cave of concrete and shadows. My light caught stacks of junk, rusted cans, a busted chair, a shelf of mason jars clouded with grime. The air was heavy, pressing on my chest, and that sulfur stink mixed with something worse. Decay, faint but unmistakable. I swung the beam around, heart thudding, and spotted it. A dark stain on the floor, big and uneven, like spilled paint that had dried wrong. It wasn't paint. I knelt, knife trembling in my grip, and shone the light closer. The stain was brown-black, flaking at the edges, sunk deep into the concrete. Blood, old, maybe decades old, but too much for anything normal. Around it, faint chalk lines formed a circle, smudged but deliberate, with symbols I didn't recognize scratched into the floor. My stomach twisted. This was Crane's pact, a ritual gone bad, locked in this room. Then the air shifted. The cold tightened, sharp and biting, and a low hum started, like the muttering I'd heard upstairs, but deeper, angrier. It came from everywhere, the walls, the floor, the stain itself. I stood fast, light darting around, and saw something move in the corner. A shadow, tall and jagged, slid along the wall where nothing should have cast it. No body, no source, just darkness stretching, reaching. Who's there? I choked out, voice cracking. The hum spiked into a growl, and the shadow lunged. I stumbled back, flashlight dropping, beam spinning wild as it hit the floor. The knife clattered next, useless, and I tripped over a box, landing hard. The shadow loomed above me, faceless but heavy, pressing down like a weight on my chest. Cold flooded me, into my lungs, my bones, and I heard it again, my name hissed slow and deliberate, like it was tasting the word. I scrambled up, grabbing the flashlight, and ran. The stairs bucked under me, with splintering, but I made it to the kitchen and slammed the door. The growling followed, muffled now, vibrating through the floor. I shoved the fridge against the door, panting, sweat stinging my eyes. The house went quiet, but the cold lingered, curling around me like a promise. I sank to the floor, flashlight clutched tight, and pulled the journal close. I flipped through it, desperate for anything to explain this. A page near the end caught me. The blood anchors them, but the house is the gate. I built it on the crossing, where the veil is thin. They speak through it, move through it. I thought I could control them, but they control me now. The basement breathes their will. A sketch followed, a crude map of the house, with an X on the basement and scrawled words. Do not open the door. Too late for that. I'd opened it, and something had noticed. The fridge rattled, a soft thud echoing from below, and I knew it wasn't over. The basement wasn't just a room. It was alive, pulsing with whatever Crane had invited in, and now it had my name. I didn't move from the kitchen floor for hours. The fridge stayed wedged against the basement door, its hum the only sound cutting through the silence. My flashlight flickered, battery dying, but I kept it on, a weak shield against the dark. The journal lay open beside me, Crane's map staring up like a taunt. The basement breathes their will. I could still hear my name in that hiss. Feel that shadow's weight on my chest. Whatever was down there wasn't trapped. It was loose, and I'd pissed it off. Dawn crept in, gray and thin, spilling through the window. The house felt still, but not safe, like a predator waiting to pounce. I dragged myself up, legs stiff, and brewed coffee just to do something normal. The sulfur smell was everywhere now, clinging to my clothes, my skin. I sipped the coffee, bitter and scalding, and flipped through the journal again. I needed a plan, something to stop this, or at least survive it. Crane's entries got worse the deeper I read. November 3rd, 1893. They demand more. Blood isn't enough. They want flesh, breath, fear. I hear them in the walls, whispering my sins. The house bends to them, shifts at night. Another page, dated months later. I try to burn it, seal it shut. The fire wouldn't take. The house won't let go. The last entry, barely legible. They're in me now. I see them in the mirror. Black eyes, no faces. I'll end it downstairs. Forgive me. I slammed it shut, heart pounding. Black eyes, no faces. That shadow in the basement. Had it been one of them? And the house shifting. What did that mean? I looked around, suddenly hyper-aware of every creak, every shadow. The walls seemed closer, the ceiling lower. But I told myself it was just panic. Old houses don't move, right? Work was an option. I called in sick, voice hoarse and shaky. Pete texted back. You okay? Need a beer or a priest? I didn't reply. Instead, I grabbed a hammer from my toolbox. If Crane couldn't burn this place, maybe I could smash my way out of this nightmare. That locked door upstairs, it had a lead somewhere. Maybe answers, maybe a way to undo whatever he'd started. The hallway felt tighter as I climbed the stairs, the air thick and cold. The locked door loomed, would darker than I remembered, like it had soaked up the night. I swung the hammer, aiming for the deadbolt. The impact jarred my arm, but the door didn't budge, just shuddered like it was alive. I hit it again, harder, and a low moan rolled to the house, vibrating the floor. The walls pulsed. Swear to God, they moved, flexing in and out like lungs. I dropped the hammer, stumbling back. Whispers started, soft and overlapping, coming from everywhere. The floor, the ceiling, the door itself. Not words, just sounds, sharp and hungry, scraping at my skull. Then the footsteps came, stomping down the hall behind me. Fast this time. I spun, hammer up, but the hall was empty. The steps stopped, and something laughed, a wet, guttural sound that made my skin crawl. I ran to my room, slamming the door, and shoved the dresser against it. The whispers followed, louder now, weaving my name into the noise. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't help. They were inside my head, clawing at my thoughts. The room grew colder, the light dimming, and I saw in the corner a shadow, taller than before, edges twitching like static. It didn't move, just stood there, black in the dark, watching. I grabbed the flashlight, beam shaky, and aimed it. The shadow didn't flinch. It stretched, filling the wall, and two spots glowed where a face should have been. Not eyes, just holes, empty and endless. My breath caught, chest tight, and the whispers turned into a scream. My scream, echoing back at me like a mockery. The shadow lunged, and I fell back onto the bed, flashlight rolling away. The weight hit me again, heavier this time, pinning me down. Cold flooded my lungs, my veins, and that laugh came back, rattling my bones. I thrashed, kicking, but it wouldn't let go. Then just as fast, it was gone. The room snapped back. Light normal, air still, silence deafening. I lay there, gasping, sweat soaking my shirt, and heard one last whisper. Clear as day. Stay. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The house wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and it wanted me here. I didn't leave the bed for hours after that thing pinned me down. My chest ached like I'd been punched, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The room was quiet now, but it didn't feel empty. That word, stay, hung in the air, stuck in my throat. The flashlight lay dead on the floor, battery drained, and the lamp barely pushed back the shadows. I kept glancing at the corner where that shadow had stood. Those glowing holes burned into my memory. Black eyes, Crane had written. No faces. I was starting to see what he meant. The journal was still downstairs, but I wasn't brave or stupid enough to get it. Not yet. The house felt different, like it had tightened around me. The walls didn't pulse anymore, but they seemed closer, the ceiling lower, like the whole place was shrinking to keep me in. I told myself it was my head messing with me. Lack of sleep, panic, whatever, but deep down I knew better. This wasn't just fear. The house was doing this. By noon, I forced myself up. My stomach growled, but food didn't matter. I needed a way out. I yanked the dresser from the door, half expecting something to burst in, but the hall was empty. The locked door stared at me, mocking, hammer still on the floor where I dropped it. I left it there and crept downstairs, every creak under my feet, like a gunshot. The kitchen was a mess. Fridge crooked against the basement door. Coffee mug shattered where I'd knocked it over. The journal sat on the counter, open to Crane's map. I grabbed it, hands sweaty, and sat in my folding chair. I skimmed for anything useful. One entry jumped out, dated a week before his last. The mirror shows them. I hung it in the bedroom to watch, to understand. They come clearer each night. Black eyes, reaching hands. It's not reflection, it's a window. I should break it, but I can't. They won't let me. My gut sank. A mirror. I hadn't paid much attention to one in my room. Small, cracked, propped on the dresser. I'd avoided looking at it, hating how it warped my face. Now I wondered what else it might show. I climbed back upstairs, legs heavy, dreading every step. The bedroom felt colder, the air thick with that sour, burnt smell. The mirror sat there, innocent enough, its glass dull and scratched. I stood in front of it, breath fogging the surface, and stared. Just me, pale, bags under my eyes, hair a mess. Nothing weird. I exhaled, almost laughing at myself. Then the room dimmed. Not the lamp. The light itself faded, like someone turned a dial. My reflection didn't move. I blinked, waved a hand. No change. It just stood there, staring while I shifted. The glass rippled, slow and liquid, and 2 spots glowed where my eyes should have been. Empty black, like holes punched through. My throat tightened. Hands pressed against the glass from the other side, pale and bony, smearing streaks as they clawed. Not my hands. I stumbled back, tripping over the bed, and the mirror snapped back, normal, just me again, wide-eyed and panting. But the room didn't. The walls hummed, low and steady, and the floor vibrated under me. Footsteps stomped overhead, attic, loud and fast, like a dozen boots at once. I grabbed the hammer from the hall, adrenaline pumping, and swung at the mirror. It shattered, glass raining down, but the humming didn't stop. It got louder, angrier, and the footsteps raced down the stairs. I ran to the door, slamming it shut, but the knob rattled, hard, like something was twisting it. Shadows slid under the gap, thin and twitching, pooling on the floor. The whispers came back, a chorus now, chanting my name over and over, sharp and desperate. I shoved the dresser back, hammer raised, but the door bucked with splintering. A cold hand, real, solid, gripped my ankle from under the bed, nails digging in. I yelled, kicking free, and swung the hammer down. It hit nothing, just air, but the grip released. The door stopped shaking. The shadows shrank, and the whispers faded to a hiss. I collapsed against the wall, blood trickling from my ankle, hammer slipping from my hand. The room was still again, but I felt it. Eyes everywhere, watching, waiting. The mirror was gone, but I'd made it worse. Crane's window was broken, and whatever was behind it didn't need glass anymore. It was here. Here's Chapter 11, expanded to around 9,000 characters, roughly 1,500 words, for a longer, more intense installment. The protagonist faces a peak of the supernatural terror in a vivid, chilling climax, with sensory details and psychological dread pushing the narrative to its breaking point. The tone stays conversational and raw, leading into the ambiguous ending you requested. Let me know if you like Chapter 12 or any tweaks. Chapter 11, The Thing in the Room. I sat there, back against the wall, blood oozing from my ankle where that hand had clawed me. The room was quiet again, but it wasn't peace. It was a kind of silence that screams trouble, like the calm before a storm you know will kill you. The hammer lay a foot away, useless now, and the dresser still blocked the door, but I didn't trust it to hold. The air was ice cold, thick with that sulfur and decay stink, and my breath came out in ragged puffs. The house wasn't just alive anymore, it was piss. My ankle throbbed, the scratches deep and red, like something had tried to drag me under the bed. I didn't look, couldn't look. The broken mirror's glass crunched under my sneakers as I shifted, and I kept replaying Crane's words. They come clearer each night. Black eyes, reaching hands. I'd smashed his window, but it hadn't stopped them. It had let them out. The lamp flickered, casting jittery shadows that moved too much, and I swear the walls pulsed again, slow, like a heartbeat. I grabbed the journal from my pocket, where I'd stuffed it earlier, and flipped through it with shaky hands. I needed something, anything, to fight this. One page near the end caught my eye, ink smear but readable. Salt holds 'em back, blood calls 'em. I lined the basement, but it's not enough. They're stronger now, hungrier. The house is theirs, I'm just a key. Salt, blood. I had salt in the kitchen, but the basement was a no-go. And blood? Crane's was still down there, dried into the floor. Mine was dripping now. Great. A thud shook the room. Not the attic, not the hall, but the ceiling right above me. Dust rained down, stinging my eyes, and the footsteps started again, heavy, deliberate, circling overhead. I scrambled up, ignoring the pain in my ankle, and grabbed a hammer. The dresser rattled, the door behind it groaning like something was leaning on it hard. The whispers came back, louder, a dozen voices twisting my name into a snarl. Then the bed creaked. I turned slow, dread pooling in my gut. The mattress dipped, deep and sudden, like someone or something sat down. The spring squealed, and the blanket slid to the floor on its own. My flashlight was dead, but the lamp's weak glow showed it. A shape vague and dark, hunched at the foot of the bed. Not a shadow this time. Solid, real, its edges twitching like static. It didn't move, just sat there, and the air turned so cold my teeth chattered. "Who are you?" I croaked, hammer up, voice barely a whisper. No answer, just a low growl, wet and guttural, that vibrated in my chest. The shape shifted, unfolding, growing taller, and those holes appeared, black, glowing, where I should have been. My stomach dropped. It wasn't alone. Shadows peeled off the walls, thin and jagged, sliding toward me, hands stretching from the dark. The whisper spiked into a scream, my name, over and over, loud enough to split my skull. I swung the hammer, wild, hitting nothing but air. The thing on the bed lunged fast, and I dove aside, crashing into the dresser. Pain shot to my shoulder, but I didn't care. Its weight hit the floor where I'd been, a thud that shook the room. The shadows closed in, clawing at my legs, my arms, cold and slimy like dead fish. I kicked free, scrambling to my feet, and ran for the door. The dresser tipped as I shoved aside, and I yanked the knob open. The hall was a nightmare. The walls rippled, wood bending like rubber, and the locked door at the end gaped wide, a black maw spitting cold air. Footsteps pounded behind me, above me, everywhere, and that laugh, wet, choking, followed. I bolted downstairs, tripping on the last step, and landed hard in the living room. The journal skidded across the floor, pages flapping. I grabbed it, lungs burning, and ran for the front door. It wouldn't open. I twisted the knob, yanked, pounded. Nothing. The lock clicked, but the door stuck like it was welded shut. The house groaned, a deep, angry sound, and the lights flickered out. Darkness swallowed me, thick and alive, and the footsteps came closer, slow now, savoring it. I turned back to the door and saw them, shapes in the gloom, tall and twisted, black eyes glowing like dying stars. Hands reached, dozens of them, pale and bony, nails scraping the floor. I fumbled in my pocket, found the salt packet I grabbed from a takeout bag days ago, and tore it open. I threw it, a pathetic sprinkle, and the shapes flinched, just for a second, hissing like I burned them. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I ran for the kitchen, grabbed the salt shaker from the counter, and dumped it in a sloppy line across the floor. The footsteps stopped, the growling turned to a snarl, and I kept going, salt on the windows, the basement door, anywhere I could reach. The house shook, walls cracking, and that scream came again. Not my name this time, just rage, pure and raw. I didn't wait. I bolted back to the front door, salt in one hand, hammer in the other, and swung at the lock. Wood splintered, metal bent, and it gave. I stumbled onto the porch, night air hitting me like a slap, and kept running, down the steps, across the yard, into the street. The house loomed behind me, lights flickering back on, a low moan rolling out like a goodbye. I stopped a block away, gasping, salt spilling from my hand. My ankle bled, my shoulder screamed, but I was out. The neighbor's house was dark, the street dead quiet. I turned, half expecting those shapes to follow, but the house just sat there, silent now, windows glinting like eyes. I limped to my car, keys shaking in my hand, and drove, didn't care where, just away. Hours later, crashed at Motel 2 towns over. I still heard it, the whispers, faint but there, weaving through the hum of the heater. My name, soft and patient, like they weren't done. I checked my ankle. The scratches were deeper, red lines curling into shapes I didn't want to recognize. The journal was gone, left behind, but I didn't need it. I knew what Crane had done, what he'd left, and I knew, lying there in that lumpy motel bed, that the house wasn't finished with me or whoever came next. Here's Chapter 12, the final chapter, kept at around 9,000 characters, roughly 1,500 words, to deliver a satisfying, ambiguous conclusion. The protagonist tries to move on, but the house's lingering presence and the supernatural aftermath leave a haunting uncertainty. The tone stays conversational, with sensory details tying up the psychological and supernatural horror. This wraps up the 12-chapter arc. Let me know what you think, or if you like any adjustments. Chapter 12, the sound that follows. The motel room smelled like stale cigarettes and bleach, but it was better than sulfur and blood. I lay on the bed, springs digging into my back, staring at the water-stained ceiling. The clock on the nightstand blinked 2:14 a.m., red digits glowing like a warning. I hadn't slept, not really, just drifted in and out, jerking awake every time the heater kicked on or a car rumbled past. My ankle throbbed, wrapped in a motel towel I'd stained red, and my shoulder ached from where I'd hit the dresser. I was a mess, but I was alive. That's what I kept telling myself. I'd driven 2 hours from that damn house, no plan, just instinct. The car was parked outside, half-unpacked boxes still jammed in the back. My whole life, or what was left of it after the divorce, and now this. I grabbed my phone, wallet, and the clothes on my back. The journal, the hammer, the salt shaker, all gone, abandoned in that nightmare. Part of me wanted to go back, burn the place down, but I knew it wouldn't work. Crane had tried. The house didn't burn. It waited. Checkout was at 11, but I was up by 7, gulping burnt coffee from the lobby. The clerk, a bored kid with earbuds, didn't ask about the limp or the scratches peeking out from my sock. I didn't offer. I paid cash, climbed into my car, and kept driving. Another town, another motel, farther from that street, that porch, those glowing black eyes. I called work from a gas station, voice rough, and quit. Pete texted back, "You serious? What happened?" I didn't answer. How do you explain a house that breathes, shadows that grab, whispers that know your name? By night, I'd landed in a nowhere town. Flat fields, a diner, a strip of faded storefronts. The motel here was quieter, cleaner, with a bed that didn't sag. I showered, hot water stinging the cuts on my ankle, and checked them in the bathroom mirror. The scratches weren't random anymore. They curved into jagged lines, almost like letters, but not any I could read. They itched, deep and restless, like something was still under my skin. I bandaged them with gauze from a first aid kit I bought, but the feeling didn't go away. I tried to settle in, make a plan. New job, new place, start over again. The divorce had taught me how to rebuild, or at least fake it. But this was different. Every creak of the motel floor made me flinch. Every shadow in the corner had me reaching for a light switch. I bought salt at a corner store, dumped it along the windowsill of the doorframe, just in case. The cashier gave me a weird look, but I didn't care. I wasn't taking chances. That night, I dreamed of the house. Not the inside, just the outside, squat and dark against a bruised purple sky. The window stared, unblinking, and the porch sagged like a grin. I stood in the yard, frozen, as the front door creaked open, slow and deliberate. Something moved inside, tall, jagged, those black holes glowing, and whispered my name. I woke up gasping, sheets soaked, the motel room dark except for the TV's static glow. The clock said 3:03 a.m. I didn't sleep again. Days blurred into a week. I found a job at a warehouse, hauling boxes, keeping my head down. The routine helped, kept my hands busy, my mind numb. I rented a cheap apartment above a laundromat, all peeling paint and noisy pipes, but no cold spots, no footsteps. I told myself it was over, that I'd left it behind. The scratches on my ankle faded to thin, pale lines, though they still itch sometimes, especially at night. I stopped looking at them. Then the noises started. Not loud, just faint, like a radio tuned too low to catch the words. A hum in the walls, a scratch on the floor. I blamed the building. Old pipes, mice, the dryer downstairs rumbling at odd hours. But one night, I woke to something clearer. Footsteps, heavy and slow, pacing the hall outside my door. I sat up, heart hammering, and listened. They stopped, and a whisper slipped through, my name, soft and patient, like it had been waiting. I grabbed the salt, poured a shaky line across the threshold, and stood there, staring at the door. No shadow on the crack, no rattling knob, just silence, thick and heavy. The whispers didn't come back that night, but I felt them, eyes on me, close and quiet. The next morning, I found salt scattered, like something had brushed through it. I swept it up, told myself it was a wind, a draft, anything but the truth. I saw the neighbor once, driving through town on my way to work. Her roses were dead, yard overgrown, and she stood there, staring at the house across the fence. It looked the same, peeling paint, sagging porch, windows glinting in the sun. No for rent sign, no new tenant's car. Just empty, waiting. She didn't see me or didn't care, but her lips moved, muttering like that night I'd caught her watching the attic. I kept driving, stomach twisting. Weeks later, I was unpacking the last box. Clothes, a mug, a photo of me and my ex before it all went sour. The radio was on some late-night talk show when it cut to static. I fiddled with the dial, annoyed and froze. Through the hiss, faint but clear, came my name, drawn out, mocking, the same voice from the house. I yanked the plug, cord snapping from the wall, and the room went dead quiet. My hands shook, the mug slipping and shattering on the floor. I don't know if it followed me or if it never let go. The whispers come and go now, random and sly, under the hum of the laundromat, in the buzz of the warehouse lights. The scratches itch worse some nights. And once, in the bathroom mirror, I swear my reflection blinked when I didn't. I keep salt in my pocket, check the locks twice, but it's not enough. I left the house, but the house didn't leave me. Somewhere out there it's still standing, creaking, breathing, waiting for the next fool to sign the lease. And I wonder, lying awake in this creaky apartment, if it's really done with me, or if it's just taking its time.